Hello, everybody. I am Dimitris Rorris. I'm going to be the presenter of the study we have conducted along with Athina, Karatza, and Apostolia Galani from the University of Athens, the Department of Pedagogy and Primary Education. The study we have conducted has searched the students' misconceptions on climate change. We have conducted a literature review on this. There is a delay in. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint? Can you see the slide that says introduction?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we begin with the fact that climate change is a very critical issue, a scientific, political, and social issue. And there are many studies that say that public education must play a role in addressing this issue. The challenge with education in general is that primary and secondary education students do not fully grasp the processes that cause climate change. So here is our research. We are trying to investigate both primary and secondary students' misconceptions on climate change, and we have done that from schools around the world. We have searched studies that have been done in various parts of the world, and we conducted a literature review on these studies. We categorized later and analyzed these studies regarding the students' age, their geographic origin, the country where they are, and the time period where these studies were conducted. The research questions that drive our study are these two. The first question is, what are the main misconceptions regarding climate change? And the second question asks if there is any association between the age and the origin of the students regarding their misconceptions. The methodology we followed is that we took an initial 438 studies from primary and secondary education schools. They had these studies were conducted in their respective countries. We searched 3 electronic databases to find these studies: Science Direct, Scopus, and Web of Science. Here are the inclusion criteria. We had to search for English studies, written in English, I mean, for primary and secondary education students aged from 6 to 18 years old. And these studies had to be of the last 20 years. After all these inclusion and exclusion criteria and the manual screening, we managed to reduce this original amount of studies to 16 in total. We conducted, as I said before, a literature review. The keywords we searched in these studies were the students, primary education, secondary education, high school. And apart from the term misconceptions, we also searched for alternative ideas, preconceptions, and of course the climate change term. Now, our results regarding the first research question, what are the main misconceptions, are the following. The first and most common misconception among most of the students, roughly half of them, believe that climate change has to do something with the ozone depletion, that the ozone layer is when there is a hole in it, and we know that now wherever there was an ozone hole, now it has it is cured, this problem. This had to do with climate change. The second most popular misconception was that pollution of the environment has to do with climate change. There are students in 3 out of the 16 studies we conducted that cannot give an adequate definition. What is climate change? There was one study that searched Tanzanian and Finnish primary school students, and it found that climate change is confused with the change of the weather. We also found one study from students in Singapore that students in secondary education believe that the daily weather is an indicator of the climate change. the greenhouse effect itself was insufficiently understood among students in 3 out of the 16 studies. Many students do not understand what are the greenhouse gases and what is their global warming potential. There was one study, I think it was in Singapore, that said that even oxygen is considered a greenhouse gas and therefore it is harmful. There was another study by Myers et al. That found that the greenhouse effect is indeed an environmental problem, where we all know that without the greenhouse effect, there would be no life on Earth. Acid rain and ultraviolet solar radiation was also found to be mistakenly coupled with climate change. The solar UV rays was also found in 2 other studies that it causes global warming. There were more detailed description of students' difficulty in distinguishing UV and infrared radiation in this study from Esterlind. And an interesting result was found in these 2 studies. Climate change was found to be coupled it has to do with earthquakes and tsunamis in 2 studies. And another 2 studies found that radioactivity can cause climate change. In one study found that students believe that energy consumption has nothing to do with climate change. Whatever we do, if we reduce energy consumption, if we recycle, that doesn't change climate change. That doesn't change our behavior and our outcome on climate change. An interesting result was that we found 2 studies with 11 years time gap between them that show some fatalistic students' views. In one study in 2013, students said that we can't do much to cure the problem. 11 years later, students say that family planning has nothing to do with reducing greenhouse emissions. Now, the second part of our results regarding the second research question, that if there is any association between age and the origin of the students. Let's begin with the fact that out of these 16 studies, most of them, 14 out of 16, were conducted on secondary education students and only 2 primary education students. The countries that these studies were taken were these in the Europe that you can see. 3 studies were conducted in Singapore, 2 studies were conducted in USA, another 2 in US, in UK, and another 2 in Spain. The rest of the studies were addressing each country, Japan, Portugal, and Sweden. And one study was conducted between Finnish and Tanzanian students. Now, the key finding here was that regardless of students' age and origin, misconceptions are more or less the same. The most popular misconception that ozone depletion causes climate change was found in students from 11, 12, even to 18 years old. 11 to 12 were found in Sweden, 12 to 14 were found in Singapore, 14 to 18 were found in Spain, etc. The second most common misconception, that pollution causes climate change, was also found in many ages, from 11 years old to 15 years old. Again, from many countries, Sjoblom in Sweden, Cordero et al. Was in Spain, I think, and Chang and Pascual Singapore students. There is, however, one small difference between primary education and secondary education students. Primary education students have more simplistic misconceptions, whether secondary education students have more complex misconceptions. For example, one study found that smoking tobacco causes climate change. Another example of primary education students shows that the coal, when you burn it, goes to the combustion chamber, into the turbine, then into the generator, and then this coal gets into the power lines and into your house. And this was something that students of primary education think so. In this graph, each curve corresponds to one misconception about climate change. As you can see, the blue spiked curve that has to do with ozone depletion is the highest, is the most common. The bigger the area these curves cover, the more common the misconception is. As you can see, the ozone depletion is the highest and is spread even to smaller ages. You cannot see it here because there is an overlap of the curves, but if you watch closely, you can see that the blue spikes are also found not only in 14 years old, but also in 11 years old and so on. So, the conclusions are that climate change misconceptions are largely the same, independent of students' age and origin over the last 20 years. There is this slight differential that we addressed before, that primary students have more simple ideas, secondary have more complex, but still false ideas on climate change. The future extensions of our study could be, for example, to search in more electronic databases, to see more, to find more studies. Another extension would be to the design and the test of educational interventions, specifically to address these misconceptions. An interesting study could be conducted to examine the role of media and misinformation in general in the internet, and how the role of media and misinformation in general can generate misconceptions, not only to students, to everyone. And the last study that would be interesting to see would be one investigating the educators themselves' beliefs on climate change, because many times we have seen that even educators, even the teachers, do not fully grasp what climate change is and how it is caused. Closing this presentation, I found the quote of Mark Twain very fitting to our subject, which in general says that it's more dangerous to think you know something than to know that you do not know it at all. These are the references that we used in the study, and here is the study design and analysis, the table where we analyze these 16 studies. And thank you for your attention.